you've got questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to talk on the phone about it, leave it in the comments. We can connect on the phone. We can connect via email. I hate saying like the stupid video, but I want to know if you like it or not. This is another Subaru Forester engine swap video. 2011, 2012, 2013 Subaru Foresters used excessive amounts of oil. So what we do is we replace those engines. Typically they're higher mild engines that also aren't running very well. We replace those with later model legacy Forester Outback engines that don't have those same oil consumption tendencies. What separates this video from the rest of my Forester engine swap videos, though, is the circumstance. I met this young man, Navnit. He's not from the US, but he's a student here for 6 months or so far. And he bought this Forester. They don't have Subarus where he's from. He really likes Subarus, and this car is awesome. He loves this car. It's a low mile car, 106,000 miles. And it's using lots of oil, and it doesn't idle. It won't idle. It wants to die. If you rev it up, it's pretty good. It has decent power, but it won't stay running. At a stoplight, it would die. He had trouble getting it started again. The short of it is, he had low compression on 2 cylinders. So through email correspondence, like 100 plus emails, we finally agreed on how this was going to work, and that he was going to bring this car to my place, and we were going to work this out, and we were going to fix this car for him. So I purchased the engine. I had all the parts on hand, and my friend Navnit came, and he brought a friend with him, Navnit. Those guys had a blast here, and I had a blast with them. They hung around while we did the engine swap. Dad and I did most of the work in about 9 hours. We did it from noon to about 9 o'clock. That engine was ready to start up the next day. So you'll see kind of the process like usual, but this is the story behind it. And I'm so glad I got to meet Navnit and Navnit. And I've been in contact with Navnit still, and we've been working through some things on his car. There's always bugs to iron out, and though the car runs great and it ran great, got him home, there was a few issues that I helped him kind of resolve, sent him some used parts. I had some ignition issues, but he is on the road. He had a great time here in Iowa and got to experience another part of the country. So just turned out to be a really cool story. I was kind of nervous about having a stranger come, and he was nervous about being the stranger to come. So let's give you a little brief rundown of what's going to happen here and what we've got. We've got a 2011 Forester. This is going in. It's a 5-speed manual transmission. What we got is a 2019 Legacy engine with 59,000 miles. Runs nice. Perfect. We don't have a tone wheel, so we're going to have to use our old tone wheel. I have discovered that if this comes with a different tone wheel in the long skinny crank sensor that I normally change and swap over, you can use the original smaller tone wheel in the longer sensor. That Forester over there is the one I tested that on. So I know it'll work. And I have a friend who did a swap, and he had success there as well with the original tone ring off the new engine and the original sensor. So you don't have to change that. We are going to swap over these rocker covers to accommodate the coil packs from the old engine. We're going to take these Denso labeled TGV solenoids out, and we're going to use the original non-labeled ones from the Forester. This coolant pipe here goes underneath, clear to the front, and we are going to plug this off. We're going to take this front engine mount off. That's unique to the Legacy and I believe the Outback. So the Forester doesn't have that. We're going to take this front cover off because, of course, as usual, we're going to swap over our intake cam tone rings. We're going to use the other cover. Oh, coolant crossover pipe. We're going to use the original Forester coolant crossover pipe. We're going to use this new intake with the intake runner valves. The TGV setup is inside the manifold, where the original Forester one has kind of a base plate with them built in. We're going to create our hybrid TGV setup with the legacy gear, the Forester magnet swapped right to left. We're going to switch out pins 4 and 5 in the harness from the Forester, not this harness, the Forester harness. We're going to use all of the fuel lines and wiring knock sensor, which is under here someplace. Knock sensor, I don't see you. Oh, on here it's right there. But on the Forester, it'll be back here. We'll want to mimic the same position back here. I think the sensors are the same, and they plug in the same, so whichever one looks a little cleaner. Actually, this fuel purge valve solenoid, it's got the same connector. Some of these are the legacy ones. I've used the Forester ones. I don't think it matters. This did not come with the throttle, the electronic throttle body. That would be the same from the legacy to the Forester. If they look the same, they'll work. Yeah. Also, the coolant crossover pipe on the old Forester engine, this pipe here comes out and goes down, and there's 2 studs coming out of the coolant crossover pipe that goes onto. So you use that setup instead of this EGR setup, which is a little more complex. Yeah, so engine mounts will come off of the Forester engine, and we'll bolt them up under here, and that won't be a problem at all. So there's a few things I can do before this friend gets here. Those things will be stripping off the intake manifold, getting all the wiring, the coolant crossover pipe, all that. Basically stripping this thing down to the long block. This will be our 10th swap, I think. Phase 2 to phase 1. Phase 2 into phase 1. So we will know. Well, it's going to be the same thing as we've done, except this is the first manual transmission car that we've done the FB swap to, which really shouldn't be any difference. We'll take off the clutch business, put it on this one, and send it. Your 2011 Forester, or 12 or 13 Forester, does not have this low oil level sensor. So we're just going to get rid of that right here at the source. Just like next, I'll take these heat shields off, and I'll take the bolts off holding the intake manifold on, and I'll disconnect this stuff here for the EGR so I can get the intake manifold off, and then I will get all the wiring, this backbone harness here off, and the coolant crossover pipe off. Right, so I've got the intake off and all that stuff, and I'm having Dad here. He's gonna pop this cover loose. I've got all the bolts out. Now that the cover is off, I'm scraping off all of the old RTV and the silicone. We got the front face cleaned off. I really like to use a nylon brush from Harbor Freight like this. Just does a really good job of getting the final surface cleaned of all that extra debris. But these are my new friends from Tennessee, and we're just about ready to pull this thing out by the roots. Everything's unhooked, and we've got the replacement engine all stripped down and cleaned up, ready for the front cover. We're going to switch these tone wheels over first, as always, and then we'll seal up this front cover right away and let it dry as we assemble the rest of the pieces. Okay, here we are in the midst of all the mess. I've got the Forester tone rings put back on the cams. I've got the surfaces cleaned up, and we're gonna put this cover on. This is the old engine. Using a quart of oil every 200 miles or so. Two cylinders with 50 pounds compression. Not good. Not good at all. So we're gonna get rid of that thing. And then we're gonna put a new clutch and pressure plate on. Put it back down in the hole and send it. We got the front cover glued on and screwed on. Got a new filter here. Got the crossover pipe on with all the wiring. I did change the injectors over from the Forester engine just because they were cleaner. And I have had an issue once where the salvage engine that I bought, despite the low miles, didn't have a good injector. And then we spent some time troubleshooting and figuring out why we were misfiring. We got it figured out, but it just took a little extra time. EGR pipe is bolted up. As you can see, this Forester EGR, the flange is a lot smaller than the flange on the old EGR from the replacement engine. I'm sorry, it's this one here. And so we had to use some washers. Otherwise, we would have gotten to the end of the threads and we wouldn't have this flange up tight. So a lot of times this coolant pipe here that goes to the CVT cooler, I'll put a hose on it and then plug the hole of the hose and clamp it good. This time I just put a 10mm head bolt, flange bolt in there head first and welded around it and then chopped it off, and so that's solid now. First time I've ever done that. But original Forester coils, because we swapped over and used the Forester valve covers. And I did glue them on underneath between the new gasket and the cylinder head. The manual shows gluing on these portions here, and this portion up here I just glued around the whole dang thing. So it's a common place for these to leak, and I didn't want it to leak. I changed the sensor over here from the original engine, and we've got a new clutch here. So we're going to use a new throwout bearing. We're gonna press this pilot bearing into the flywheel. And this thing is going to live again in the morning. We're going to let the glue set up on the front cover and on the valve covers, rocker covers, and then tomorrow we'll add fluids and we'll turn the key, see what happens. Okay, another key critical when we're swapping things over from this old intake manifold to the one that came with this fresh engine. This time I'm going to use the fuel purge solenoid that came with the engine. But you got to take this bolt out of this fuel supply in return. And you got to feed all that hose through of this one. And you put it all back in there, and that hose comes up underneath of this purge solenoid. And the reason you have to switch that over, it's just there. It's different. It's different. We got to make it work. Now is where the real fun begins, kiddies. We took these TGV solenoids off. These are the ones we're going to use. They don't say Denso. They're just straight up black. That's what you want. I'm not using these Phillips head screws. I'm going to use 10mm headed flange bolts because that's way better than trying to get these on and off inside the car to readjust. So took this nut off the shaft here. This magnet needs to come off. This magnet says B on it because it's on the passenger side. It's going to move over to the A spot on this new engine, and you see how that's kind of oblong like that, squared off on the sides to accommodate this shaft. We have got to hog this out so that when we put it on the new shaft, it's going to be like this, and we got to turn it and mimic this old position. Okay. Not only do we have to put magnet B in place of magnet A, we also have to go to the harness and switch pins 4 and 5 around, just like in my previous video. And there's, oh, this one doesn't have a washer. Okay, on the new engine there's a washer, and you have to put an extra washer, so 2 little washers in between the magnet and the gear over there to space that magnet out just enough so that it can be read by this little doohonky. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're depinning 4 and 5, and it'll say on the back of this connector there's 5 and there's, I'm sorry, yeah, 4 and 5. And so what we have to do is you get a hold of these in the back, and down in here you gotta press to release. You have a real sharp, tiny little pick or screwdriver, and then once it's released, you can pull that wire out backwards. And I'm struggling now. There it is. There's one. And then we do the same for the other. Don't have to be too close. So we just pull that one out, immediately go into the opposite one, snap it in, put this one into that one, click it in, get our little lock tab, and now we're done. We just plug it right in over here. Okay, I've done all the swapping. Everything's ready to go back in. Put the flywheel back on, torque those bolts to 56 foot-pounds, and the pressure plate bolts to 12.5. The clutch friction disc is in there. Barred it over a few times to make sure that nothing was stuck or grinding or catching, and I think it's going to be good. Next stop, in the hole. Primed the oil a little bit by pushing the pedal, holding it clear to the floor while I cranked it over. Probably 5 or 10, it was more like 10 seconds. And then started it up. I'm going to get a flashlight, look underneath of the car, and make sure we don't have anything coolant-wise leaking out, spewing. Looking good. Pretty excited. This car wouldn't idle when it pulled in the shop yesterday. It kept dying and then it didn't want to start. The compression was so low on 2 cylinders. So we're already better off than we were. Hallelujah. Okay, so far so good. Ran the car for about 35 minutes. At idle, just let it set. No codes. Everything seems to be pretty well. Runs fine. We're gonna put a few miles on it here, drive around town, and see if we can't get it to act up. Just a little follow-up here. Put probably 10-15 miles on the car. Runs really great, smooth. Only the AC condensate's dripping. No coolant leaks, no oil leaks. No engine codes. Car has 106,237 miles on it, and this engine has 59,000 miles. Usually when I get a replacement engine, I try to get it with as close to half as many miles as the car has on it as I can. Sometimes it ends up being more, but I don't like to get an engine that has more miles on it than the car. That's just kind of protocol. I've had a lot of people reach out with questions in the comment sections. I have a couple other Series 2 engine into Series 1 car swap videos. Keep it up. If you've got questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to talk on the phone about it, leave it in the comments. We can connect on the phone. We can connect via email. If this was helpful to you in any way, I hate saying like the stupid video, but I want to know if you like it or not. And if you have questions that you would like to see me put in another video, if you have questions or things you'd like me to address or try on this particular swap, or any swap really, Subaru related, let me know. I love trying stuff that people suggest. And this is the next rig. And if you have some comments or whatever, I could try them on this one. We'll be starting that one in a couple weeks. Thanks for tuning in for another swap. We can send these boys back to Tennessee.